What do I currently believe is the best way to learn a language? And I say currently, deliberately, because things change. So when I was a kid, learning languages was very much, here's the next grammar point, learn it, and here's a great long list of vocabulary to learn at the same time. Even though I was better at languages than most other things, I found that tough. Learning lists of things was never my strong point. And also, when I was at school, they were going through a phase of not actually teaching you grammar in English. Not explicitly, anyway. And so most of my grammar I obtained from learning foreign languages. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. Speaking languages was always a problem for me. Apart from the obvious issue of me being an introvert, language speaking in class is never natural, and you're doing it in front of a whole load of other people, listening to every mistake you make. I never got that confidence in speaking. And even though I used Spanish later on in work, it was mainly typing it, not speaking it. Fast forward to now and learning languages again, and things have changed a lot. There are a ton of online resources. Surprise, there was no internet when I was a kid. There was barely even colour TV. And even though those online resources have their failings, they also provide a lot of opportunity too. My overarching feeling is that language acquisition plays a huge part in language learning, but that it needs to be backed up with other things. So I do believe you need to have some kind of grammar backing to your learning, even if you're not literally sitting down with a grammar book, and it's only kind of passive, like with Duolingo. Unfortunately, Duolingo is failing me on that at the moment with Welsh, with no explanation at all without me having to go over to Duomi and look up the old instructions. If you don't have some kind of grammar knowledge, I think you're going to struggle. I believe you should start listening to native speaking language early on in your language learning journey. It doesn't matter that you don't understand it. That could be radio, TV, films, YouTube videos, songs, or anything else you can find. The important part is spoken by natives. You need to hear how people really sound, because an app is never going to truly give you that. And it's quite rewarding when you start to actually understand a few words that they're saying. The second most important part is that you should enjoy what you're consuming. So watch the kind of films you would watch in your own language, or YouTube videos on subjects that interest you. That way you'll get more out of it and discover vocabulary that will be ultimately useful to you. I also believe that you should read in the language as soon as you can. This can start with very simple things. For example, when I started learning Italian, I used to watch YouTube videos that were basically fairy tales told in Italian, with subtitles. Many were stories I already knew, but having the words as well helped me to understand what was being said. Once you get better, you can perhaps graduate to some online articles. As far as books are concerned, maybe starting with something that is translated into the language is better, especially if it's something that you've read before. But I do believe you should gradually move over to reading things that were written for native speakers. The trouble with translated books is that they are translated to mirror the language of the original book, so it's not necessarily completely natural in the target language, however well it's been translated. The point of this is to get the gist of what is being said, not to obsess over every single word that's being spoken. Otherwise, you'll never get anywhere. And as for speaking, you may not need to or ever want to speak the language, especially if you're doing this to be able to read the literature and you don't think you'll ever have an opportunity to go to the country. As far as I'm concerned, that's perfectly fine. You can get a tutor on one of the many apps available, but that's quite expensive and therefore not open to everyone. So what are ways you can practice speaking if you don't have a handy native speaking friend? Well, reading everything out in the app that you're using for learning would be a start. Reading articles or books out loud is another way. You can repeat phrases you hear in radio, TV, or songs, and with the latter, you can even sing along, which is quite a good thing to do, especially if you have all the lyrics, which you often do on Spotify. Although, once again, I'm being let down on Welsh with that one. There don't seem to be many with the lyrics. You can talk to yourself, go around the house naming things, making up sentences about what you see. There are lots of ways to practice speaking if you really want to. What about writing? Well, most of the apps give you some practice of writing, but it's not really realistic writing, it's single sentences here and there. I'm not really a fan of sitting down and doing a ton of exercises in a grammar book. I prefer something more natural, like maybe doing a journal, or simply writing a paragraph about something that you're really interested in. You could, for example, summarise a video that you've just watched about a topic that you're interested in, practicing that vocabulary. This sounds like a lot of different things, and I admit it is. I guess my takeaway would be to have as many different things as possible, because that will help to keep your language learning fresh. That's what works for me. Maybe it'll work for you too.